Good morning, and thank you for taking the time to join me today for this presentation. Some of you may have seen me yesterday sharing some data on the core investors across the globe, more specifically looking at those who won the 12 awards, which we published yesterday. So today is kind of hinging a little bit on that, but we're going to look very much at this tech meet industry piece and how industry is playing a role in scaling digital health. All the data I'm going to show you today is available on HealthTech Alpha. HealthTech Alpha is our proprietary platform that we built some 9 years ago to, catalog and track what's happening in digital health across the globe. We heartily recommend that you go and create your own free account and have a little play for yourselves. Digital health, as defined by Galen Growth, is very much looking at digital healthcare technology across the healthcare value chain. So it goes from very much, say, the research bit, molecule, all the way through to patient solutions, adherence, etc. It's a very long definition here, but just letting you know that that's how we look at digital health across the value chain. So this slide, some of you have seen yesterday. It is, in fact, the only slide that you've seen before. All the rest of my presentation on a new set of slides. But just to say that digital health funding globally is back on track. So as at the end of September, we had about just shy of $20 billion invested across 1,124 deals. In fact, if you look at a year-to-date picture, there's the laser work, probably not, but if you look at the little red speaker box here, you'll see, in fact, we're at $23.2 billion already in terms of funding globally, which after a somewhat weak November puts us possibly to match, if not slightly exceed last year. But in Europe, the good news is that we're already at almost $5 billion of funding invested, and therefore that means that we will be significantly exceeding total funding of 2023 by the time we get to the end of this year. So it's all good news for Europe. Things are, the pendulum has swung the other way. That's the good news. If we look at the breakdown of funding, the usual top three, UK, France, and Germany, they're usually fighting between each other to maintain the top three positions, but that's what it looks like. And then Switzerland, Portugal are fourth and fifth. Switzerland usually punches quite a bit above its weight. And Portugal, of course, has got quite a few decent leading digital health ventures such as Sword Health, which have met success in the US, but is still a Portuguese-founded company, hence why we track it as Portuguese. But that gives you an idea of the general spread of funding as you look at the top 10. So, if you look at funding, Q3, unusually so, saw a massive upsurge in Europe. I thought everybody had gone on holiday in July and August in Europe, but turns out the investors weren't, and they were happily investing during the course of that period of time, which saw a huge bump in funding, as you can see, in that period, across a fairly steady number of deals, and therefore we saw what we explained yesterday, in fact, that we're seeing a move towards bigger deals, we're seeing a move towards more later stage deals, and therefore we're seeing an average deal size climbing. If we look at those type of large deals, this data is up until the end of September. We've had, in fact, another 3 or 4 deals exceeding $100 million in Europe in the past couple of months. So where it says, in fact, that there are 5 mega deals in Europe as at the end of September, we're now at about 9 or 10. So we've certainly seen an upsurge, which corresponds to that funding upsurge I was referring to earlier on. So that's the good news in terms of the fact that we're seeing in Europe a return back towards mega deals, but it's still shy versus what we're seeing in the US. As far as exits is concerned, it's not that exciting. It's mostly M&A activity, and 70% of M&A activity in digital health is venture to venture. So we're still not seeing the big players coming in to acquire, nor are we seeing the IPO market or SPAC markets reopening at this stage. We'll see what happens next year. But certainly no real change in that particular temperature as far as exits are concerned, which of course is having a knock-on effect back up the investor value chain. But let's look at this investment and see where it's going. So if we look at the left-hand side of the chart, I'm looking at therapeutic area. So there I can show you that in Europe, and this is European data, we've seen a significant upsurge in funding going towards women's health, and I'm talking a very broad definition of women's health here, from menstrual cycle tracking all the way through to, say, breast cancer type solutions, and in mental health. The mental health pickup is quite interesting because the US saw that happening in H1, very quiet in Europe, and then suddenly during Q3 we saw a big bump up in a focus on mental health in Europe. And of course, oncology continues to be in the top 3, but didn't quite see the same uptick in that period, that year-to-date period. If we then switch our spotlight across to what's happening by category of digital health, as you'll see, the real pickup was in health management solutions. That's the health systems, really focusing on leveraging digital health to arrive at a more operational, more productive environment. And then patient solutions and research solutions is very much a focus we're seeing from pharmacos, and we'll also look at that in a minute, particularly around tech bio, research solutions, kind of AKA tech bio, and we're seeing a general shift from pharma towards those capabilities. So some of that is good news from the perspective of the way in which some investors have been strategizing in the last year, but also in terms of some of the way, the behavior and focus and strategy of industry, and we'll come back to that in a minute. If we look at where the funding is going, and that's one of the first caveats, where is that funding going? Well, if you look at it through the lens of AI, and there was a conversation about AI, of course, on the previous panel, none of you will be surprised to see that 61% of all funding deployed in 2024 is going towards digital health ventures that are leveraging AI to I guess, power their solutions in the market. Now, if you're not doing that, you're obviously at the back of the queue as far as investors are concerned, but it also means that there are question marks around whether this is a short-term uptick during 24, and we'll see a correction of behavior in 25, as many investors then start realizing that, A, which horse do we back in AI, but also have we overdone it because we were looking for a way of distributing the funds that we've got in our reserves. The interesting pattern is that if you look at the right-hand side of this chart, you'll see that, in fact, the focus is very much on research solutions, patient solutions, and health management solutions, which I was saying to you before. So that mirrors the previous slide. On the right-hand side, the AI focus is driving in the same way. Not unsurprisingly, in terms of drug discovery, a lot of the conversations we're seeing are really around how AI is playing a role in those solutions. The other caveat to some of that funding upsurge in Europe is if you look at funding strength. And what we're looking at there is a chart that says to you, right, how many ventures actually raised funding in the last 18 months? It's still a very tough picture. So if you look at growth stage, the top chart, you'll see that some 40% of ventures have actually disclosed a fundraising event in the last 18 months. So some 60% of European growth stage digital health ventures have not raised, which in the current funding climate is a tough place to be. And Sarah will present this afternoon, I think, my colleague at the back, more data on what the growth stage investors are actually doing. But if you then look at early stage, the guys that really took the hit in the last 18 months of funding drought, you'll see that, in fact, only 27% of early stage, so it's up to and including Series A, digital health ventures have declared fundraising in the last 18 months. So I think we will continue to see some restructuring, some, I guess, some shrinking of the space during the course of 2025. Anyway, that's funding. Let's look at partnerships. The good news is that whilst the funding drought has kind of bottomed out and is starting to teeter towards coming back into play, what we are seeing is a continued focus on building partnerships between larger organizations and digital health innovators. I'll go into some of the detail very quickly now before we run out of time, but the key figure there is a 20% increase year on year in a number of partnerships disclosed between a large organization and a digital health company. Now, which types of organizations are driving these partnerships? Startups are still very much the lead player in terms of mergers. Not always of equals, but that's what we're seeing. And that's a direct reflection of the state of the market as they seek pathway to profit and therefore look at building solutions that are increasingly relevant to the ecosystem. But, of course, second and third are health systems and pharmaceutical companies. So the NHS, for example, in the UK, and pharmacos we'll look at in a minute. And of course, if you look at the bottom right-hand chart, you'll see that we're looking at research solutions, medical diagnostics, and patient solutions with a continued focus of those top three industry categories. I will quickly jump through the next two slides, which you will find in our new report just published this morning that looks at the top 25 pharmaco companies and what they're doing in digital health. You can download that free of charge. But we really are seeing that if you look at the most active partners in Europe, top 5, pharmacos. Usual names. The interesting thing about that is that if you looked at the picture at half year, you will have seen Mayo Clinic in there, for example, that was very active in the first half of this year as far as building partnerships with European digital health companies. And finally, but not least, this is the direct output of our report we published this morning. Every year we look at the top 25 pharmacos and we look at their activities in digital health and we look at the alignment of their portfolio with their strategy as well as the quality of that portfolio. And we end up with, of course, a ranking table. Top right chart shows you the alignment of strategy. Bottom right tells you the quality of their portfolio. And of course, if you match one on the other, you end up with a nice 2x2. Everybody likes a 2x2. And it gives you that particular chart. If you look at the report, you'll see who are the big movers up and who are the big movers down. Some of them are not unsurprising when you see that some pharmacos have essentially dismantled the digital health teams and therefore have left digital health kind of in limbo within the organization. And we're seeing that as an outcome. So I would encourage you to download that to get a feel. But hopefully what you got a sense of at the moment is that Europe is in a very positive territory as funding is concerned, but specific categories have been focused on, specific technologies have been focused on, but that at the same time industry, health systems, pharmacos, etc., are doubling down on building partnerships within things such as research solutions for pharmacos, for example, or within productivity plays when it comes to health systems. Thank you for your time.